Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to Sweden once again, although this wasn't one of the beers that I actually picked up on my travels. I got this one at Market Wines here in Durham. So for this one we're going to return to Gothenburg, Göteborg as you'd say in Swedish of course, and we're going back to Beerbliotek. And this beer is a collaboration with Örebro Brygghus as well, and Örebro of course is out to the west of Stockholm if I'm remembering correctly. But this one is number 205, of course Beerbliotek always number their beers, and it's called I Don't Usually Drink Breakfast. So it comes in at 6.9% and it is a coffee IPA, and this I just picked up this one simply because, you know, a coffee IPA, who's ever heard of that before? But some weird things, I mean, over the years with craft beer we've learned that weird things work when it comes to beer. The black IPA is something you never would have thought would have worked, but yet it does. The Belgian IPA, I suppose that one probably would have worked, but I've also tried a Rauch IPA as well. There's things like white stouts and all of this, so a coffee IPA, you know, it's just another piece of experimentation that I think we need to have a look at. So looking forward to this one. Two good breweries involved in this. Örebro Brygghus of course are doing some really interesting Berliner Weisses and things like this at the moment, and Beerbliotek, as we know, are probably one of the better known Swedish craft breweries these days. They're exporting all over the place, as is evident with me picking up this beer in Durham. So looking forward to this one, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on it. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here. If you want to get straight to the tasting, of course, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done both from Beerbliotek and from Örebro Brygghus. There no doubt will be more from both in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course uses a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city or state, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Beerbliotek first off then. So as I've mentioned to you before, this brewery is based in Gothenburg, Göteborg as you would say in Swedish, and it was founded back in 2013 by a multinational group of friends. So this is Adam Norman, who's from Australia, Richard Bull, who's from New Zealand, Anders Hedlund, who is a Swede of course, and then there's Darrell de Necker, who comes from South Africa. So Adam and Richard actually ran Bar Doppio in Gothenburg, and then Darrell and Anders were regular customers at the bar, and they often actually just used to sit and chat to each other about beer and homebrewing things and stuff like this. So they actually decided to buy a kit and brew their own beers after a little while. But the brewery itself is in the old Klippan Sugar building, which is a really nice old building if you look at the pictures of it, and it's actually very close to the old Carnegie brewery in Gothenburg. And Carnegie beer is actually, or Carnegie Öl is actually one of the really kind of famous beer brands, the really historic famous beer brands that you're going to find in Sweden. But their brew kit actually is from Brewfab in Scotland. I believe Brewfab made all of the Brewdog things as well, and in their first year they apparently brewed 38 different types of beer, and all of their beers are brewed in small batches usually, and so this is basically them kind of sticking to their home brewing roots. This is actually why Beerbliotek used the little number symbols on here, because they do so many different beers. And the idea behind the name Beerbliotek was that, as they say, they just wanted to brew a really wide variety of things so that they could always learn something new about brewing, be it like new yeasts, adding new adjuncts to the beer, new hops, new malts, all of these kind of things. So basically the name is meant to mean beer library, which really is exactly what these guys do. They do say that they don't have a fixed range of beer, but there are beers that I've seen quite often, and I think when it comes to the fact that there's the Systembolaget rules in Sweden, probably butchering that word again, but when it comes to the Systembolaget rules, they've got some quite strict things that they need to have, and I have seen a couple of beers like a passion for gingers being repeated and stuff like that, so they do repeat their beers every so often if they do prove to be popular. But it's always cool with these guys because you get a lot of collaborations and you get a lot of different beers. My one complaint about it, to be honest though, is the Systembolaget rules actually make it quite difficult for these guys to release all of their beers in Sweden, so it's actually easier to get a lot of the different beers outside of Sweden. Like for example, if I go to Kiosk over in Copenhagen, usually there's a better selection of the Beerbliotek beers there than there actually is in Sweden, but hopefully the rules in Systembolaget can actually evolve to kind of cope with breweries like Beerbliotek at some point. But a very good brewery. They've had some really good accolades, and these guys are definitely one of the Swedish breweries that you want to check out if you get the chance. They're doing some really awesome stuff. So anyway, on to Örebro Brygghus. These guys are a little bit newer than Beerbliotek, of course. So Örebro Brygghus are based in the Absholmen industrial estate in Örebro, and the company is run by Anders Granberg, Jesper Palm and Christopher Mathiesen, and in total there's actually 8 co-owners of this company, but the brewing is done by Jesper and Christopher, who are actually both qualified brewers, and they previously worked for the Närke Brewery as well. But Anders also worked for Systembolaget for around 14 years, so they really do have a good booze pedigree, if you like, among the 3 main guys that are running the brewery. So in 2012 they got the idea to start their own company, and they first introduced their beers to Systembolaget back in 2016, and in the brewery they have a brew kit from the UK which can brew up to 2,000 litres at a time, and by 2017, by the end of 2017, they were planning to have an annual capacity of 200,000 litres of beer per year, and I believe they have met that, and they are actually planning to kind of expand further. But Örebro, as I say, my experience of Örebro so far is that they're doing some pretty nice IPAs. They've got a couple of strong imperial dark beers that I need to have a go at. I saw those when I was playing around with the Systembolaget website, so I need to see if I can get some of those when I go back. But my last experience, I'm sure, was a Berliner Weiss called Hallon, and I was actually really quite impressed with that. So hopefully they continue to experiment with the sour beers, because they did seem to have a little bit of a knack for that. But Örebro, I would say, are probably one of the more kind of up and coming breweries in Sweden. So if you get the chance to try some of their beers, have a go, because my experiences so far have been pretty positive. But that's the thing with craft beer, you should always be willing to try new stuff. So you've got 2 good breweries involved in this beer basically, and this one I think is going to be really interesting. So if you want to learn more about either of the breweries in this case, just have a look at the brewery websites. But let's actually get on to the tasting of this beer itself. So yeah, artwork on this one is pretty much kind of standard as you'll find from Beerbliotek. You always get this kind of style of can. One thing I do actually like about these beers, I do think this is pretty cool, because craft beer of course is international. I like how they put that on the back of this Swedish craft beer. I like how it's got that little thing, and of course you can see the 1 krona pant there as well. But it says here on the front of the can, collaborations are an integral part of our brewing philosophy, and when our coffee craving friends from Örebro headed south to brew with us, we knew they'd have only one thing on their mind: say hi at beerbliotek.com or örebrobrygghus.se. So yeah, Örebro Brygghus and Beerbliotek with this one. There you can see actually the map showing you where Örebro is, just out to the west of Stockholm actually. I need to go and explore Sweden a little bit more, but as I say, 6.9% Coffee IPA, and I do like that, the beer can pouring into the little coffee cup there. So without further ado then, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. This should be a really interesting beer, and this is the whole point of doing this channel actually, is so that you get to try some really kind of weird things. So yeah, try to smell actually as it pours. Oh, that's weird. Yeah, it's like coffee, but it's also it's coffee, but it's also like nice kind of hoppy notes as well. So really strange. So yeah, as you can see with this one, it's poured a quite a dark, murky kind of orange colour. Probably about 2/3 of a finger of a head on this one. I would say it's actually quite a beige coloured head that's on this beer. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass. There's 1 or 2 wee bits of sediment in there, right enough. And with this one, I would say, yeah, definitely a sort of, it's not quite a blood orange. If I hold it up to the light, it does actually go a little bit of a blood orange, but on the camera, you're probably seeing that as being quite a kind of murky, dark beer more than anything, but it looks really, it does actually look pretty nice. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass. As you can see, there's no real kind of transparency to this beer, but yeah, 1 or 2 little bits of sediment there, and it looks quite interesting. The smells that I was getting off this beer are really nice, so let's take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on. Yeah, you know, it really does smell just like, I don't know if it's right to say it smells like an espresso or something. I actually don't drink coffee. I've only been really getting into coffee flavours from like coffee stouts and stuff like that, but I never really drink coffee. So whenever I have caffeine, I get a real crazy buzz off it. So probably should have drank this beer a bit earlier, to be honest. But yeah, with this one, there's some nice juicy fruity notes to it, but the coffee is kind of serving as the base. You can pick up a little bit of the pale malt. The coffee in this one smells really smooth, and that's probably just it kind of mixing with it, the kind of pale malt and stuff like that. For me, the coffee comes out a little bit earthy, if you like, but at the same time it does have a little bit of a kind of almost floral aromatic quality to it. As I say, I'm no expert on coffee. I do remember having a beer from Dugas, like an imperial stout that was brewed with all these coffee beans from Bristol, and that was a really, I think it's Sidamo Dimtu it was called, if I'm remembering correctly, and it was lovely. And the coffee in this one has a little bit of that same kind of floral aromatic note from the coffee. So yeah, pay attention to that. You can get really different smells or different aromas from coffee beans. So that's something that you can really experiment. If you find a good base recipe for a stout, you can try all these different coffees in it and just see, you know, get all the different kind of taste profiles of beans from different countries and stuff like this. But yeah, so with this one, yeah, as I say, the coffee's giving you the base on that. There's a little bit of grapefruit in there. You can pick out a little bit of an almost, I want to say peaches. It's got a little bit of that sharpness that you pick from peaches, but the fruity side of this beer leans towards the kind of tropical side of things. There is a wee bit of a floral kind of grassy quality, which I'm guessing is coming from the hops, but I do think there's a little bit of an aromatic quality to the coffee itself as well. If you take it, if you breathe it in quite deeply, you can smell that the coffee isn't just flat, if that makes sense. I'm pretty sure there is a little bit of an aromatic quality to the coffee. And those of you who are well versed in coffee, do let me know your own thoughts on this, because this is something I need to learn. This whole beer channel, of course, is my kind of learning process about beer. So do let me know your own thoughts on the smells of the coffee in particular with this one. That would be greatly appreciated. But yeah, take a little bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of this one. It's lovely. It has the IPA things that you expect, and it leans towards the juicy side of things when it comes to the IPA. But that kind of matte, that sort of aromatic coffee base, bready coffee base that it has, is really interesting. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this one then. So this is the I Don't Usually Drink Breakfast number 205 from Beerbliotek in Gothenburg in Sweden as a collaboration beer with Örebro Brygghus from Örebro. Let's get stuck into this one then. Slanja, skål. Well, it works. It really does work, actually. And it's interesting that, you know, this is one of these weird things. I mean, as I was saying, you've got beers like white stouts, black IPAs and stuff like this. And the coffee in this, it's really subtle. You know, it's really just lovely how smooth it is. It's a lot more pungent in the aroma, I would say, than it is in terms of the flavour of the beer, actually. You would think the coffee would be a lot stronger than it is. Yeah. So, the malt base on this one is, I think that's one of the things. I think they've just wanted to have a very subtle coffee flavour with it, but it really does work. I mean, there's, you know, to be honest, I always like to maybe try and think of other beers and stuff to compare it to, but there's really nothing that you can compare this to. You have to just try this for yourself. The malt base on this one, you know, you get blanketed with this kind of sort of paleo, bready kind of thing, and then the coffee just sort of blends into it. And you've got this lovely smoothness in the middle of the palate. Granted, you can get a little bit of a kind of bitterness kind of just pushing its way out as the flavour kind of mellows out. You've seen how long it was since I've taken a sip of this beer, but you can feel the coffee notes just starting to push their way out and give you a little bit of bitterness from the malt base. But really, I think it's, I don't know if they'll have used maybe some wheat malt or something in this to kind of smooth it out. I don't think it's only pale that's in this. I think there is a little bit of a wheaty character. The malt base does have a good kind of bready, wheaty presence to give it that smoothness. It must do, and then the coffee just blends in with that really quite well, actually. So that it's just interesting that works. And this is the cool thing about craft beer, when you get things like this that you're just like, how's, you know, what's that going to be like, and then it works. I love that when it comes to brewing. But yeah, really, you have to just have a go of this beer yourself. It's really, I love it. You know, after 1,200 beers roughly, you know, when you try something like this, and it's just completely different from what you've had before, it's quite a satisfying video to do, actually. I just like how that blends together. The malt base in this one really works. In terms of the hoppy side of the beer then, back corners of the palate, you've got a little bit of earthiness there, but that of course builds a good bridge with these kind of coffee flavours. As you come further forward along the side of the palate there, there's maybe a little bit of a herbal quality to it. As you get forward towards the front of the front sides of the tongue, you can feel there's a little bit of a kind of slightly spicy floral note in there. I do wonder if there's a bit of English hop in there actually to give you this kind of herbal earthy quality. If you use, probably not Fugels right enough, but if you used something like East Kent Goldings or something like that, that would actually be a really interesting hop. Of course, you can get some of the American ones that are slightly more earthy as well, but I think the English hop, I do wonder if there's English hops in this beer just because of the herbal quality. English hops, of course, do tend to have that sort of earthy, herbal quality to them. And then round the front curve of the palate, it's just a little bit lighter and grassy, and of course as you go behind the front curve of the tongue, you get that nice oily bubble, and that's where you start to get these nice juicy fruits from the American hops. So with this one, it's interesting. I think there's a little bit of grapefruit underpinning it. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of grapefruit underpinning this beer. There's a little bit of a kind of peach. I want to say it's guava. You know, I might be completely off the mark, but I want to say it's guava. There's a bit of peach in there. There's definitely a little bit of an almost peachy sharpness to the tropical fruits. It does definitely lean towards the tropical side of things. I don't think it's really a citrusy fruit that's coming out of this. I want to say it's peaches and maybe a little bit of guava or something that's in there. And as the flavour progresses, it just kind of smooths out, and you maybe get, I don't know, maybe a little touch of lychee or something like that, but that would mean citra, something like that. And I'm pretty sure it's not citra they've added to this beer, because you would get mangoes and things like that if you had citra. But I mean, we can talk about all the different hops all day. The main point of this is that it's unusual, but somehow it still works, and that's what I like about this. But yeah, with this one, I just like, you know, I can't really say much more than that. You can't really compare this beer to anything else. It's just, it works, and it works quite well. I like the way the malt base goes together. The hoppy side of things is nice, and then the juicy fruity notes work out really well as well. Just everything. This beer isn't too in your face in any one regard. This is more about blending flavours together, and that's what I like about it. As I'm talking about the philosophy of Beerbliotek wanting to experiment with different things, and Örebro must be like that as well. And this is, you know, this is a beer that really kind of epitomises that, if you like. It's just nice. You have to try this for yourself and just see what you think of it, because it's one of these strange ones that just kind of somehow works. It's not in your face in any one way in terms of the flavour. It's just all about how these things go together. That herbal quality, that earthy quality, that builds a really good bridge between with that nice bready coffee base that it has. It's a really good beer. It's well done, and it's cool to see that they experiment with something like this and get it to work. And you know, when Beerbliotek are brewing these beers, they'll release them after they've only brewed them maybe once or so, and it just shows you the quality of the brewers that they've actually got. In terms of the mouthfeel then, beer's mid-bodied. Carbonation on this one is quite smooth actually. This beer leans towards the smooth side of things. There's a little bit of an oily character to this one, but overall it's got quite a smooth, it's not quite a creamy mouthfeel, but it's not too far off it, if that makes sense. There's a good little bit of bitterness to this one from the hops, but it's not going to blow your head off in terms of IBUs. The malt base is really smooth. There's a little bit of bitterness from the coffee right in the middle of your palate, but overall this beer is just mainly for me it's smooth, but there's just a little bit of IBU there and some kind of juicy fruits as well. But overall, you know, it works really well, and I have to admit, I do like how everything kind of goes together with this beer. It's really, really quite nicely done. So all I can really recommend with this one is that you try it for yourself and see how it goes. I'll need to see if I can have a go at some of the darker beers from Örebro as well, because I do suspect some of the qualities that will be coming out in this beer will be from them as well. But I'm a lot better versed with Beerbliotek than I am with Örebro in terms of dark beers and coffee and things like that. So yeah, have a go with this one and see what you think for yourself. All I can say is it's a really unusual beer, but it does work, and it's one of these ones that has a really good kind of complexity to it, and it all just kind of slots together really quite well. So have a go at it and see what you think. So I think that's probably a good place to sign off with this one. So this one was, I was saying I don't usually drink breakfast, or I don't usually have breakfast or something like this. I keep mixing up the names with some of these Beerbliotek beers, but yeah, really nice beer, this one, that's just somehow works. So as always, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Till the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from both Örebro and from Beerbliotek. Both have got good selections these days. Check out my social media and all these things. You can keep up to date with what's going on, and thank you once again for watching. I don't usually drink breakfast. A 6.9% Coffee IPA from Beerbliotek in Gothenburg, and Örebro Brygghus from Örebro. A really interesting beer, not something that you would expect to work, but it sure as hell does. So until the next time, slàinte just now, and I will catch you guys very soon. Skål.